Well, welcome everyone to the Public Safety and Veterans Subcommittee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have Councilmember Thelda Williams on the phone, and at this time, I'll take a motion to approve the February 10th minutes.
Move approval?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes. Number 3 is call to the public. It doesn't seem like we have any cards at this time, so we'll move to items 4 through 12. They're consent items. No presentations are planned. However, staff will be here to answer any questions. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I move.
All right, we have a motion to approve items 4 through 12.
Second?
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I like to, there was a request from Councilmember Thelda Williams to continue items 13 and 16. She would like to be present to talk about the update of the Police Department central booking and also about the, I think number 16 is the jails, right? Alternatives. So if everyone's in agreement, we'll just continue those two items, number 13 and 16. Do we need a motion on that? Already, those items will be continued. So if you're here on item number 13 for the updated police booking and central booking programs, that would be continued to, I think it's April 13th. That'll be in 2 weeks. Next item is item number 14, an update on crime statistics. It's information only. I'm not sure if we want an update on that.
I would love it if we could do Community and Police Trust Initiative first. I think there's many people who are here from the community on that one.
Already? We'll move to item number 15.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for having us here to talk about the Community and Police Trust Initiative. I appreciate the invitation to talk about it. And I'm joined today by Police Chief Joe Yonner and our CPTI co-chairs Carol Coles-Henry and Julian Nabozny. I just wanted to start out with some overall comments about my view as city manager of policing in Phoenix, because that's really sort of what we're trying to drive at here is how are we doing policing in Phoenix? And then I'll talk about CPTI specifically. Carol and Julian will talk about the recommendations that the group made to me, and then Chief Yonner will talk about what steps the police department is taking with those as we move forward. So I'd say, first of all, the kinds of issues that arise in the police departments are really not ones that get fixed as much as they need to be addressed. Because what arises in a big organization like police are human issues, and those don't often, they're not simple, but it's important that we address them in an ongoing and sustained way. And I think we have a history of taking our issues head on and seriously here in Phoenix, knowing that we always have to address issues. And secondly, perfection in performance by police is not an achievable standard. And it's not even really a definable standard of perfection is not possible. But what we want to do with 3,000 officers who are out there 24/7, 365, they're making split-second decisions, interacting with the community. Everything does not always work out as we might like it to, as we view it in hindsight or from a distance. But while I don't believe it's possible to have a perfect police department, I do believe that you and the community and I expect a department that's willing to learn, change, and improve, that's willing to hold people accountable, and it's willing to be open to community input. Now, I don't say any of these comments to diminish individual feelings about specific interactions with specific police officers, because those feelings are real and we need to address those and we need to respect them. But on the big picture, overall, I want to talk about the police department. And I think We have a remarkable police chief who's one of the most open, flexible public safety managers that I have really ever encountered. And Chief Yonner does that from a perspective of a 35 veteran of the police service who's been out there and done just about every job there is to do in the police department. And we're very fortunate to have the chief with us. And I'm focused on making sure that the next chief has his best characteristics. And we're working on that now. I think we also have a remarkably open and flexible police department. Again, not perfect, but remarkably open and flexible department. In the 23 years I've been observing and working with and supervising the Phoenix Police Department, I've seen tremendous changes, and I've seen a department that is willing to adapt and transform and address issues. And sometimes we forget that policing policies and tactics that we take for granted today actually are rather new. And they actually grew out of some critical incidents and some reviews that have happened in the last 20 plus years. So just as a reminder, and these are some painful ones of that. Edward Mallet, that was an example where the police department had to review its tactics with what's called chokeholds or carotid holds. And they've minimized those and they've changed. The Rudy Buchanan and the Julio Valerio incidents, where the police department had to transform its use and its opinion about using lethal force. And so today we have tasers and stun bags and other techniques and training to reduce what had been in the past a different way of viewing lethal force. More recently in our memory, Michael Johnson, Councilman Michael Johnson, the situation with him, his encounter with a police officer, led to a lot of soul searching in the city and in the police department. And so some things today that we still, even in this short period of time, take for granted. Coffee with a cop, community-based training programs where we use community members in our training, public safety day at churches. Getting into body cameras was a result of those efforts. The bringing back of a position in the chief's office that was first held by Gerald Richard and is now held by Marshall Franklin was a result of that dialogue. The work done by then Lieutenant, then Commander, now Assistant Chief Mike Kurtenbach and his team in the Community Relations Bureau with Sergeant Tovar and Officer Samudio, those grew out of that. Officers carrying business cards. Lots and lots of things have developed out of community dialogue and work with the police department over the years, and it's really important to remember that. More recently, the death of Michelle Cassot. Chief Yonner has instituted crisis intervention training. It was featured in the newspaper recently as an important advance for the police department and how we train our officers and deal with issues of mental crisis. In the budget this year, we've added a police psychologist, a proposal for a police psychologist for officer wellness, which is a major concern of the 21st Century Policing Report, and body cameras, funding to get into a body camera program to have transparency with the community about the actions of our officers. So with that as background, I want to just talk a little bit about the Community Police Trust Initiative and what it was. So we call it the CPTI, of course. We have to have shortened initials here. The CPTI was a panel appointed by the city manager to be advisory to the city manager and the police chief as we consider how we can continue to address the issues that arise and the public concerns about transparency and accountability. It was not born out of any one critical incident, so it's a little different from the past. Most recently, the outreach task force before it was born out of what happened with Michael Johnson. This was actually just from a sense that I had as city manager that the mood in the country about policing, given what was going on in Ferguson and Baltimore and South Carolina and Florida and on and on and on, meant that we had to be proactive in addressing how policing must adapt in this environment. It built upon the community engagement and outreach task force work that came from the Michael Johnson incident in 2010, and many of the members moved from that into this, but we added several new members to that. And the point was to get a diverse group of really smart people together who could talk freely with each other and the police department to share experiences, develop strategies, and work with the community so that we could get the best advice to myself, Assistant City Manager Dahoney, and Chief Yonner about how best to see the police continue to adapt. And it provided a common platform, police and citizens, to work together. I have heard some concerns that I handpicked the CPTI, and that's true. I did select the members of the CPTI. It is a city manager's task force, which is an important distinction because as it's advisory to me, so therefore the rules governing its meetings were a little different than it would be if it had been appointed by the city council. It is a wonderfully broad and diverse group of people, many of whom are here today with us, and I'll ask them to stand up if they were on the CPTI. Thank you guys, Patrick and Jeremy, for being here. Okay. There are 17 community members appointed by me in March of 2015. You have our co-chairs here, and Corey Williams from the manager's office, and Mike Kurtenbach, Marshall Franklin, and that team also provided staff support, and they began meeting in April 29 of 2015. The group is wonderfully broad and diverse, as I said. Many of them I knew from having worked on the Community Outreach Engagement Task Force. Several of them I didn't know at all, but they represented important groups to include. So we had representatives of the disabled community, from the Human Relations Commission, from the Somali community and the refugee community, which was new to our work, from the Center for Neighborhood Leadership, and expressing concerns of new arrivals to the United States in that community. And so it was a great group. This is some of them. They weren't all here for the picture. And even one of them, Otieno Aguel, who's in the center there with the cap, actually traveled with Chief Yonner to Washington, D.C. for a national conference on community and police trust. And there was a document printed in which the chief and Otieno were quoted and had an extensive role in that. And so that was kind of a nice outcome of this on that level as well. So this group had an open charge and an open field to work on, which was build your own process, gather information from each member's own resources, talk to your own communities, bring that to the group, reach a consensus on a limited number of recommendations, and do that within the time frame of a calendar year. Because I learned from the previous one, it needed to have a short time and an end time so people could focus and then feel like they could move on with other things that they needed to do. And the group did a great job. They did it in a very serious and studious way, as you'll hear. And the work actually, part of the work that they did is being recognized by the fact that the U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch has indicated that she would like to come to Phoenix as one stop on her 6-city tour to highlight different parts of the 21st century policing report. And she's going to specifically highlight with Chief Yonner the training efforts that have gone on in the city of Phoenix. So that was also a nice feather in the cap from the work this group has done. So the chief and Mr. Dahoney are now taking time to carefully review the recommendations and see what can work, what can be adapted, and what might have to have further work to flesh out, and we'll go over those. There may be some recommendations that will ultimately need to have city council approval if they require significant policy change. And there is one important recommendation here for public listening sessions that I know is very important to members of the community. And so Marshall Franklin is going to lead the effort for the chief in pulling together the community listening sessions this spring and summer and working with the community to do that, members of the CPTI and others. So just in conclusion, the Phoenix Police isn't perfect, but they must be willing to listen and adapt. The chief has proven that he is up to that task, and the next chief will have to prove that he or she is up to that task as well. It's our community partners like CPTI and others that are critical to the process. And so now I'll invite Carol and Julian to talk about the specific recommendations, and Chief Yonner will speak about the work that's being done to incorporate them into the work of the Phoenix Police Department and where there might be further dialogue needed. Carol?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Nowakowski, Vice Mayor, and council members, City Manager Zerker, Assistant City Manager Mahoney, for the opportunity for Julian and I to report on the noteworthy recommendations and results achieved by community stakeholders in this Community Police Trust Initiative. 2015 was a banner year for the City of Phoenix and the community. We worked collaboratively towards a collective vision to benefit the community and the city in the areas of police trust and accountability. It's been an honor to participate. Our process included knowledge exchange, taking into account expert opinion, national standards, best practices, and emerging research. For City Manager Zerker to have the vision to assemble such a diverse group of people and collaboration for our city and the community is commendable. We know that leading a local law enforcement agency is very complex based on the policy issues, managing community expectations, employees, the media, and working with elected officials. And all of that work is noteworthy, and we feel that we were a significant part of that. This initiative is unique in that it was not born out of an incident or controversy as we began our journey. So I'd like to thank all the CPTI members, Julian and I, and the city manager for entrusting us with this significant responsibility that will have long-lasting impact for future generations. I'd like to now go specifically to our activities, basically. And the key CPTI activities, we met from April 2015 through December 2015. The hundreds of hours of work that was associated with this project was incredible. One of the first things that we did was we reviewed the 2010 task force findings, and Julian was the co-chair of that task force, so we had continuity between the original task force and our Community Police Trust Initiative. In looking at those task force findings, we looked at the status of implementation of the recommendations and talked with staff from the police department on the implementation. We pulled in outside presenters, experts, including the Department of Justice and other police department officials and outside community leaders. One of the things we felt really great about is that we studied the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing report. That report just happened to be coincidentally issued in the midst of our work, and that was around the month of May of 2015. And so that report became a part of the basis of our dialogue and discussion. Their best practices and policy and working in the area of community trust was very helpful to us. Chief Yonner and Otiena Aguel participated in the Police Executive Research Forum. As Ed mentioned, it was a conference on community policing in Washington, D.C., and some great outputs happened as a result of that. I understand that Otiena went back to another session at the Department of Justice based on the key input that he provided in that process.
I have a question, and it's for Julian. The 2010 task force findings, were those the 33 or 34 findings? Okay.
Yes.
And so you used those findings, you started or reviewed those findings, and can you give a little background on that?
A lot of those recommendations were actually implemented by the police in the past 2 years. Like the city manager mentioned. So we didn't have to address those issues. We just added new concerns, new recommendations based on information we got from experts around the country, community leaders, Washington, the Department of Justice. And so the recommendations that were made a few years ago were actually implemented by the chief and the police department.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking is because I took your CPTI recommendations, and then I also took the 21st century policing and created a grid to demonstrate or to show where the 21st century was infused with the CPTI. What I did not do, and that's why I'm asking, is about the 2010 task force findings, because at the time, I was moving from this document. So what I'm planning on doing is going back and going to the task force findings and seeing where the 2010, what has been accomplished and where it also could be infused in the CPTI. So it's good to know because it's not,
Right.
it'll
Yeah.
be easier then.
You'll see that many of them were implemented, like body cameras. That was our number one recommendation. That was my recommendation back then, and it's been implemented. So
Okay.
you'll see that.
All right, thank you.
And that's an excellent suggestion, to look at the continuity in this process. So thank you, Councilwoman. That's real. Police leadership, final recommendations. We presented, it was a really very intensive discussion amongst our members. City manager tasked us with coming up with 7 to 9 recommendations. Well, we came up with 2 tiers. We came up with 9 one-tier recommendations, and that we felt that the value of the other 6, which made up 15, we felt that they should also be included in this process. So we have a report that was issued and a summary around November 19th of 2015, and we felt that all of those recommendations had value. The city manager reviewed those recommendations with police leadership, and police leadership reviewed and responded to all the recommendations and listed outreach activities for the past 12 months. There was a very impressive list, very voluminous, and we feel that that information can also be added to the Phoenix Police Department's website. The Tier 1 recommendations, we'd like to review those with you now. These are not in any numerical order. We're just giving you the concepts. Training for the community and the police on interfacing with law enforcement. This could be similar to a Train the Trainers initiative for the community with citizen volunteers. We felt strongly that this was a twofold recommendation that had external community components and internal city components. The second one is to enhance training for all officers, from civilians all the way up through executive ranks. The third one is to collect traffic stop data. This is the recommendation included by demographics, geographics, precincts possibly, incident types, suspicious vehicles, ethnicity and gender. The fourth one is to implement community listening sessions, and we heard a little bit about that a minute ago, at least 2 times a year. And this would involve all communities, inclusive of youth and young adults. To study the creation of a civilian review body. This body would hear complaints, have investigative powers, possibly have an auditing authority. This recommendation specifically felt that the city manager could look at best practices around the country and come back with a recommendation for that. The sixth one is to assess best practices from the National Initiative for Building Community Trust and Justice. In the midst of our research, not only was a 21st century policing report issued, but there was this Attorney General's initiative that involved John Jay College, the National Network for Safe Communities. We felt that that's something that the police could look at best practices from that effort. Report data on fatal or non-fatal shootings. This would be adding a requirement to the use of force policy in regards to that. The next one is to seek least harm solutions. It would be warnings in lieu of citations, in lieu of detention for young people for minor infractions. The city has a rich history in regards to that through its prior first offender program. I don't know if that's still underway, but that's in the mindset of that recommendation. Report data on each time an officer draws and trains a weapon. On this one, we felt that this could enhance professional accountability. There are some collaborative reform efforts nationally. It would be something that the police department would need to look further into. The next one is to report Phoenix Police Department composition and compare it to census data. We feel that the department should continue, and does a great job, but continue to strive to reflect the community that it serves. It would report on diversity in hiring and promotions, occupational categories, recruitment, training, and outreach. And of course, to report on the department's efforts with implementing the 21st century policing recommendations. It's a very special report that we feel, as issued in 2015, can continue to provide a blueprint for the Phoenix Police Department. It's already engaged in reporting on those areas, and we'd like to see that continue. Best practice metrics, those things that the department has underway. Provide formal feedback tools. Well, that includes such things as community surveys, using best practice indicators in that effort to track and report levels of trust, respect, transparency, and accountability. Have a statement on the Phoenix Police website on their use of force policy in plain language. The committee felt that it could be a little bit clearer about what that means, the policy means, and I think a lot of that's underway right now. Encourage continuous engagement of the Phoenix Police Department with the community. Places of worship, festivals, youth-based programs, interacting with neighborhoods, that type of thing. High-crime neighborhoods. Track and report employee commendations. We felt that was important. Those things can be reported to the City Council, to the Human Relations Commission, and other boards. So those are our first tier and second tier recommendations. We felt that they all have value. We feel that they will lead the Phoenix Police Department into the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years. We know that in a situation like this, that you have to have a beginning place. And under this police chief and this city manager, this report was issued. And Julian and I and all the CPTI members feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to spend most of 2015 working in regards to this report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, first of all, I want to thank Carol and Julian for their participation in this. They dedicated a lot of time, and we really appreciate their leadership. As Ed Zuercher said, we've been involved in community-based policing for years. We adjust. We're flexible in how we deliver our service. This is just another opportunity to get input from a diverse group to help us do our jobs better. In your packet is a long memo, and Carol referred to it, and it's just a snapshot of some of our community-based policing and outreach efforts that we've done in 2015. There's a lot of stuff that we do. We will continue to improve upon those and continue to work hard to make sure we're meeting the needs of the community. There's 15 recommendations that came forward from the Community Public Trust Initiative. We're going to implement 12 of them, or either have been implemented or in the process of implemented, and we have 3 of them that we still need to do some work on. And I'll go through them briefly, and if you want to ask me questions as we go through them, that would be great. So the first one, and I'll summarize it, in your packet has the full definition of the recommendation, so I'll summarize it here for the PowerPoint. It's basically report data on fatal and non-fatal shootings that we are involved in. We've done that, and we are doing that. So that one is implemented, and just as a point of reference, in 2013 we had 31 officer-involved shootings. In 2014 we had 21. Last calendar year, we had 17. This calendar year to date, we've had 4, which is on par with 2015. We've also added in that an in-custody death component. That was a recommendation of the CPTI. Community listening sessions. We've got budget meetings coming up and budget hearings that we're all attending for the next couple months, but shortly after that, Marshall Franklin, we're going to get those rolling so that we can have those out to the community, again, to solicit input and make adjustments to how we deliver our service as needed. Enhancing officer training, we're doing that. We started in April 21st of this year with a module that has a lot of the curriculum that was recommended by the CPTI in it. Last week, March 21st, we started additional training in de-escalation. Every Phoenix police officer will get training in the next 4 months on de-escalation techniques and changes to our use of force policy. In our use of force policy, we've added a sanctity of life statement as well as other criteria for de-escalating when it's safe to do so. So we're really focused on training. I'm glad the CPTI recommended that. As Ed said, I'm here for a little bit longer till October. It is very important that the Phoenix Police Department continue to train in all these aspects, procedural justice, implied biases, all those types of things. We need to continue to train so that we have the tools to be successful. The next one is access best practices from the National Initiative for Building Community Trust and Justice. We're involved in that as well. We will monitor that and assess it as we go. Our community relations staff is on that, and we will look at those best practices as they go. Sorry.
And I guess before we move on from that slide, we're not having the second session until, community session until fall? That seems like we have momentum that we might want to,
We haven't even had the first one yet.
right.
So we're going to have the first one. We can have them whenever we want. We were just going to get the budget meetings done and then start working on putting those together. And I'll ask Marshall if she has a time frame on when we're putting those together.
To Chief Gowner's point, we do plan to start community listening sessions. Our goal was, quite frankly, to get through our budget hearings, which occur over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then from there start working with our community, diverse community, many members of the community, to figure out what that needs to look like, where we need to hold them, how many maybe we need to hold in the spring, and how many we need to hold in the fall. But the goal would be by the latest June of this year to at least host the first one. We want to make sure that we do it right. We want to make sure that we're comprehensive. We want to make sure that we're formatting it in a way that meets the needs of our community.
Wonderful. I suspect, at least in my case, I'm hoping we'll be in my council district soon, and I suspect that you're going to hear from my colleagues the same thing. So we'll wait for public comment and my comments from my colleagues, but from my perspective, this is the community's trust initiative, and we need to be out in the community talking about it and getting their reactions while we have momentum.
Thanks, Marshall.
Marshall.
Marshall? Why don't you just pull a chair up there, Marshall?
Come on down.
I think you're perceptive of the direction we're going in.
So, Marshall, in formulating that, it'd be nice to visit. I really would like community organizations to help design what that community forum would look like. In addition to that, is to really work out a timeline with them as a group, work out the timeline and making sure that we meet the needs of the community, and we are able to do it also meeting the city needs, because there's a lot of dynamics and other forums that are happening, and so how we do it and work it through simultaneously with staff. So those are just some recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Marshall. Next recommendation, report on the department's composition and compare it to census data. We've done that here at Public Safety in some of our hiring updates. We'll continue to do that. I want to say our hiring is going very well. We've hired 213 people this fiscal year. Just to give you some numbers, we have about 114 that have graduated the academy and are out either in our post-academy, our field training program, or solo, and we have another 73 in the academy right now. We're very diverse in our hiring. We're doing a really good job as far as females. We're up about 6%. We're up about 6%. We're also up in Hispanic. So we're really, really doing well, and I'm very happy with our recruitment team. The next one, and Councilwoman Pastor alluded to this, a report on the dialogue with the community on President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. Back on October 16th, I put a committee together. Commander Matt Giordano is leading it, and we are looking at every one of those recommendations, what we currently do, what we can do to improve in that particular area on that particular recommendation, and we'll keep you informed on that. I envision us coming to public safety and just going through all those and how your Phoenix Police Department is implementing those recommendations. I can tell you I've read that document a couple different times. We're doing very well. We do a lot of those things already. There's things we can always improve upon, but we're doing a lot of them, and that's very encouraging. The next one is a plain language use of force statement. That has been implemented. It's on our website. As I referred to earlier, we are also updating our use of force policy and adding some things that are in the 21st Century Policing Report, as well as some other best practices from throughout the United States. Next one, continuous engagement of the department with the community. That's ongoing. We will continue to do that. Listening sessions will help us refine our engagement, and we'll continue to do that. Training for community on interfacing with law enforcement. We're working on that as well. We are constantly seeking opportunities to engage in that with our Coffee with the Cops. A lot of things in the memo that's in your packet from our activities in 2015 we'll continue to do. So we're fully supportive of that. Seeking less harm solutions.
Let's go back to that one just a second. So that one got a lot of conversation with me from the committee about what that means and from community members. And I think we're gonna have to work on that sort of dynamically, Assistant Chief Kurtenbach's group of what that means. So working with community partners to train, I think is gonna mean different things in different communities. We've had members from the African American churches who have some ideas about what that means in their context and their setting. I think other members in the refugee community, it means something different. And so I know the police and police chief and Chief Kurtenbach are willing to be flexible to work with different communities about that training there. I don't think there's one size fits all on that. So we just wanted to amplify that a little bit.
And I agree with you, Ed, because in my ride-alongs that I have been part of, and as you know, District 8 and District 4 have a large population of refugees. And I believe that there should be some cultural competencies in how we interact with all our communities, but in particular with the refugee community, because what I noticed is, and it's a cultural thing, when people are talking in a different language, sometimes we get excited in our expressions, or it's just a natural way of expressing ourselves, and it may seem like we're loud and we're in a bit of a heated dialogue, when what is happening is we're just expressing ourselves, and it's a natural cultural way of expressing ourselves. And it's not only in the refugee community, it's also in the Latin community. When I sit with my husband's family and travel to Puerto Rico, we all of a sudden I'm talking louder and I'm like expressing myself using my hands and everything. And so it's just a form of expression. So I think it's critical that we have some of those cultural competencies on how we interface with one another and the law. And so, thank you.
And to your point, ma'am, we're one of the few, your Phoenix Police Department is one of the few that have a refugee advisory board. And we do a lot of training with them, meet with them quarterly, and it's a very good relationship to have because everybody's a little bit different and allows them to give us input on how we can react as well. So we're actively involved in that. Where were we? Seeking least harm solutions, that's a difficult one. We're going to work our way through that. We have Mike Kurtenbach, who's mentioned here a few times. He sits on the Maricopa County Juvenile Justice Steering Council and the Arizona Supreme Court Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative Committee. So we're kind of seeing where that committee goes and getting some of their recommendations so that we can implement this outside of just the police department, involving the entire criminal justice system. So that is one that's in process, but we fully support. Providing feedback tools, exploring methods to supplement the department's feedback by surveys. The city does a survey every couple years. We want to be involved in that. So that is something that is on our future as far as surveying our community on how they feel safe. And you've seen some of those surveys in the past.
We're actually going to have to come back and talk about that because we do not do surveys anymore. The funding for that was cut. And so if we want to implement this recommendation, we're going to need to get funding reinstituted to do specific surveys. So that's one we'll have to have more dialogue on.
Track and report employee commendations. We're doing that through our honors board. That's very important. I'm glad you recognize the fact that there's a lot of good police work that's going on out there. There's a whole lot of good police work. Our crime is down, and a lot of positives going on in the police department. The last three, so all those are the first 12. The last three that we're going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to do all those 12 probably, if we haven't done them already, within the next 6 months. So we're working hard on those. Very good input from the CPTI. We're going to continue to do those. The next one here, report data anytime an officer draws and trains his weapon on a subject. We have to work our way through that. It has been implemented in other police departments. I want to gather information on how we implement that, how we track that, how we record that. What does that data actually give us? If an officer pulls his gun and points his gun at somebody, what is the result of that, and how do we change because of it? So we need to do some further research on how that works before we move forward with that, and we will. exploring a civilian review panel. That's something that City Manager Ed Zerker and I have talked about a few times. There's been some research done on it. Every city does it a little bit different. I think we need to do some research ourselves to see which works best for Phoenix. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, Ed.
Yeah, the recommendation was to explore it and study it, and I think we can do that. I need to talk further with the chief and with Mr. Mahoney about how we gather the best information on that, because it's, as the chief said, cities do it very differently, and we need to understand what is the outcome we're seeking and how we can best provide that outcome and what that involves, how costly it is, how extensive it is, what it all means. And so we're going to have to do some evaluation of that over the next 6 months.
And then the last one is collect and report traffic stop data, and it's a lot longer than that in your packet. And we will do that in time. As you know, we just implemented an RMS system in October. We need to get that system stabilized, get our field-based reporting, get all our other things squared away in the next 6 months, and then start moving towards gathering this type of information, because we will have to make changes, software changes to our system in order to gather all of that. So further study on that one as well. It is important to know who we're stopping, why we're stopping, and all those types of things, and we will get there eventually. And that concludes my part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do want to emphasize and thank the CPTI. Anytime we can get information from our community that helps us do our job better, we're open and receptive to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember
Michael,
Pastor.
let me just make a comment. This goes back to the members of our group. We had 17 members that represented every single group of individuals, different races and colors and religions here in Phoenix. I was amazed, and I want to thank the police department and the city manager, and the mayor, for putting together this selective group, because we listened to everyone. We always asked our members to go back to their groups, to their friends, and come back and share with us their recommendations. We always did this, every meeting we had. So everybody was inclusive in these recommendations.
Thank you. Councilmember Pastor.
Can you go back to slide 13? It says provide formal feedback tools. What is the cost to that? Is it personnel? Is it the person that's writing the survey? Is it administering the survey? I'm curious only because there's many different ways we can do surveys, and there's many different ways we can reach the community that wouldn't cost much. And so I'm just trying to get an understanding around this.
I think we're open to ideas. The citywide community survey has been cut, so we're not doing a citywide community survey any longer. But there are other tools that we can develop, and we're open to ideas on that, and can develop some as well.
You're talking about the survey in general that was given to the community, or
There was a
About
citywide
our
survey
services.
that was about our services, and we had included specifically some questions about trust in the police department.
Okay.
In the previous two, that was actually an outcome of the Michael Johnson Outreach and Engagement Task Force, and we had started tracking that. But with that survey having been suspended, we don't have that tool right now.
and what's the cost of that?
I think it was like a $60,000 or $70,000 item.
The other part of that is we'd have to determine if you want the survey results to be statistically valid, then it has to follow a certain procedure in order to roll it out. If it's more of an informal kind of thing, it's nothing wrong with that, but it may not be statistically valid based on the demographics of the city. That's what you're paying for within the 60 to 70 to make sure the design of the survey instrument is done appropriately and then properly executed.
And as you mentioned, Councilman Pastor, that survey was much broader than just police as
Right,
well.
right. And the reason why I'm asking it's because I just did a survey with the youth. And so I found a ASU professor that does surveys and that does these pieces and has the ability to say, you know, what question are you asking? What are you trying to go, you know, these items. And so she volunteered. And so that's why I'm asking, there probably are some ways that we could figure it out if cost is the dynamic holding us back from this. And I think we have to explore that and see where we can develop it and see if we can find those to volunteer in creating it and crafting it. So,
I think you're right. I think cost is an issue. I don't want to say that it's the thing that's holding us back. We just don't have this particular tool in our tool bag right now.
Okay.
The one thing I would just caution is because the stakes are so important in the kind of feedback that we are getting, and because the stakes are high in how the chief needs to implement the information, we've got to be really certain that the information is statistically valid and validated. So if we can get that done through ASU and volunteers, that's great. But the really important thing is that we can be absolutely certain of the quality and the certainty of the data.
I think there's probably a professor that does this all the time in the criminal area, and I'm sure we can kindly convince to help us in this process.
We can follow up on that.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. When the council voted on the item about city surveys, I was in the losing side, so I wanted to continue the survey. I think it's important that we reach out to the citizens and hear from them. We are a customer service organization. For-profit companies that are in the customer service business spend money on surveying their customers because it's important to understand that and have that data and feedback. Before being elected, when I worked at the Salt River Project, I did a lot with our measurement and evaluation group, and we would regularly use Arizona State University and other students to do research, but you did not always get an accurate sample. You would get a sample that skewed online and younger. Quite often, students were very good about getting other students to take surveys, and that's enormously important here. The younger demographics are ones we hear particularly often about on police community initiatives, but we really do need to be out there and get the full breadth of the community. For example, we, through Valley Metro, just did surveys on transportation side, and a lot of the folks who use our transportation system are particularly difficult to reach. Many of them prefer not to speak in English. They have other languages that are their primary language. It is just more expensive to do that type of research, and that was why I thought it made sense to spend some money on that and not do the cheapest alternative, even though we do have to be very, very frugal with taxpayer money. But this data is enormously important, and I hope we'll revisit that decision. I personally think the council got it wrong.
Already, we have 12 cards, and at this time, if my colleagues will allow, we should hear from the public. Right? All right, the first person, Jeremy, come on down. If you could state your name, and you have 2 minutes after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Helfgott, as you saw earlier, I did have the opportunity to serve on the CPTI task force. I do want to thank the city manager, thank our co-chairs, thank Chief Yonner and his executive staff. I just want to make one point that was underlined a little bit and I think is worthy of underlining again, that this ongoing process is just that, an ongoing process. This particular task force has delivered its recommendations. We see where they're going in terms of implementation. We know that listening sessions with the public are in the work, but the work on this, if it's going to be effective, needs to continue. And I think we saw that after the work of the previous task force. There was a little bit of a gap in time and things slowed down a little bit. Even as they were being implemented, the public wasn't necessarily engaged at that point. And so, yet again, I will emphasize the work here is not done. And whether it is through established boards in the city, be it the Human Relations Commission or elsewhere, or through the next iteration of this, which will hopefully be the exploratory process of looking at a permanent civilian review and complaint body of some form, I will just encourage all of you to please stay on this as members of the council. Please continue to keep the community engaged with this, and know that there are those of us in the community who will continue in that process, and we are here as resources both for you and your constituents. And I thank you. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Question? Jeremy, thank you so much, and thank you for serving on the task force.
Thank you.
Next, we have Irene Chavez.
I'm Irene Chavez, and I represent Somos America. I am here to speak about my experience with the Phoenix Police Department, in particular, a family that came to me when I was teaching at Kenilworth Elementary School District a few years back. I'm now retired. I had a mother that came to me and said, pulled me out of the classroom very quickly and said, I need to talk to you about my son. He's been traumatized by the police. And the reason he was traumatized is that she had called the police to come in and help her intervene with her son, who was an addicted teenage boy. And he was wanting to commit suicide. The police came, and instead of helping, they shot him several times, and he died. Well, needless to say, my second grader was pretty traumatized the whole year. I lost touch with that family, but I don't know what happened. They were suing the city. But that they trust the police department, I doubt it. Did I trust the police department? No. I don't trust the Phoenix Police Department. What I would have wanted them to have done at that point, if I had been there, is that they would have intervened in a different manner. Had they brought a crisis team with them, someone that does social work, community work, someone that could have talked that boy down instead of having him shot to death, that would have helped. And I think it's part of your recommendations here. You need to look at doing some work with the people who are addicted. You need to intervene in terms of offering them treatment and use some of your budget for that. You need programs in that respect, to try to help them instead of shooting them when you get to the point where they're either trying to kill themselves or they might even kill you. I think you need people that are not uniformed to help. We don't trust the uniform anymore. You need people that can go out there and actually talk to us, one-to-one, man to man, woman to woman, child to child, and actually speak to us where we're at. What are our crises and what are the things that are happening to us that have led us to the point where we want to commit suicide. You need a crisis team. You need social type workers. You need people that are like us. You need to build and serve, and trust will come if you provide the service and you start to actually protect us. I don't feel protected right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Chavez, and thank you for those recommendations. Mr. Woods?
Hello, Jeff Woods. I'm really disappointed in what I see on the CPTI. From 2009 to 2014, Phoenix, Arizona, the Phoenix Police Department leads in per capita people killed by police. From 2010 to 2013, our police force killed 5.5 times as many people as the city of New York. This is a huge problem that we need to address now. All of these things that I see on the CPTI are just words, nothing with teeth. We need an early intervention system that is data-driven to help find the officers who are at risk for hurting people and getting them off the force. Right now, all you have is self-reporting, either self-reporting or coworker reporting. As you know, coworkers don't report on each other, and men typically don't self-report on mental health issues. This Civilian Review Board, I hope, is not picked by the city manager. He has enough power as it is. This needs to be a community Civilian Review Board. We need people from the migrant community, from the LGBT community, from the black community to have a voice in appointing all these people. All the people that I saw in the CPTI are all city insiders, okay? They were probably told not to spend any money on any of these recommendations because there's no teeth in any of them. I expect you guys to really do something about this. This is something that has to happen now. We were 4th in the country in 2015 for people killed by police. This isn't something that is ongoing. This is something that we need to do yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. There were some statistics that were thrown out there, Chief. Can you tell us if those are correct or not?
Some of those are based on, I don't know what specific, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee that he's referring to, but some of them are based on Maricopa County. So it's not all Phoenix PD. I don't know what he's referring to. I'd have to look at 'em.
ACLU and the Guardian.
We'll look into that. Thank you. Next is Mrs. Woods.
Okay, I'm Joanne Scott Woods. We don't need perfection in our police force because we all are human, but we do need truth and reconciliation. We need healing. And this could be done through a Truth and Reconciliation Tribunal that they did in South Africa with Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. Ferguson was actually asked to do this following Mike Brown's death, and we as a city can establish this. I have contacts where we can do this. We have international contacts to set this up in Phoenix. Black and brown citizens have lived in fear of police, and concerned citizens need this tribunal. Truth and reconciliation going forward for our community and the police can be through body cams now, immediate funding, not within 3 years, but beginning this fiscal year. Serious consequences for not having body cams on when an officer steps out of his vehicle. They should be like criminal charges. They're tampering with evidence. And serious consequences for not filming an officer reading a person their rights and their acknowledgement of their consent. I was close to the family of Remain Brisbane, and the two things that they wanted was an independent prosecutor and an independent investigation. And they also wanted an apology, some form of recognition that that there was something done that was wrong. For example, a lawsuit by the family proved that they were successful in winning, or that the police department determined that they had wrongdoing. And one of the ones that I have recommended are justice banners for the fallen citizens. That can be a form of reconciliation with their names and the date. Thank you.
Next, we have, I think it's Tara Marshall, is it?
Hello, my name is Tara Marshall, and I would like to invite people to look at me, especially police in this room, because I am the face of a person with a developmental disability. I am autistic, I have epilepsy, and every month there is a story out of at least one police department in this country of a person with a developmental disability or a mental illness who has been killed in an interaction with police. We've hopefully had our incident for the area in February with the death of Caden Clark. But it is unfortunately something that happens frequently to members of my community. And we are a community that is not consulted. We're not involved with this task force. In fact, I have in touch with the parents of adults with autism community, and they had no knowledge of this task force. So there needs to be some change. When people talk about when people talk about disabilities, they think of the physical disabilities, they think of the sensory disabilities. They don't think of people with other communication disabilities or intellectual disabilities. And I'm lucky in that I have good verbal abilities as an adult. That was not the case through my entire life. It may not be the case again when I'm older. And quite frankly, the only way you would know in an interaction with me that something is different about me is if you took the time to look at my medical ID bracelet. I work with a lot of kids for whom this is the case. You will not see it. But even when it is the case, there was a young man with Down syndrome who was killed by the police a couple of years ago because he decided to go to another movie without paying for it. I'm sorry, that's not worth a death sentence. What happened to Caden? He was in his own apartment. He was a danger to no one but himself. And quite frankly, responding to someone who may be a suicide risk by killing them is probably an inappropriate response at the very least. Thank you for your time. And if anybody needs my contact information, it is available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing up those points. Is there anyone from the autism community on the task force? Maybe we can look, if not, maybe we can look into that.
No,
for
but I
the
think,
future.
as we think about our community listening sessions, we certainly want to make that one of the groups we go to and find ways to involve that community in the discussion.
Thank you. Carolyn Spencer, I think it is?
She's not here.
Okay. Norma Jimenez?
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry, I'm a little sick. My name is Norma Jimenez, and echoing to Vice Mayor Kate Gallego's comment earlier on community being a part of this process, right? So I think it's important to have the community input in the process. The title of the program itself includes the word community, right? So by having a diverse group of individuals as part of the initiative is not enough. And so my ask is for city council members that I know that this is like an informative and a discussion report, but my ask is that you make an actual motion to City Manager Zerker to hold public meetings or to hold public hearings in every district over the next 4 months. 2 are not enough in our community, and so we need more of these hearings in different areas of the district. And as you're planning these meetings, I ask that you also consider the communities that are there. And as we're going, and I'm going to the budget meetings, there's only one bilingual meetings. And so like when you're holding these meetings, I also ask that you consider the Hispanic community or other communities that speak a different language. So that's all.
Thank you so much for your recommendations and comments. Next, we have Vivi.
Echo.
Yes.
Maybe some of these meetings, we have to make sure that they are in Spanish or bilingual, and that we have presenters that are fully Latinos.
Last night we actually had a budget hearing that was bilingual, and it was out in Maryville, and we have a translator, and those individuals that want to hear it in Spanish actually had some earphones. And one of the suggestions was that we continue doing it that way because it's important that the whole community is involved in hearing the Spanish-speaking concerns. I made a suggestion of doing it all in Spanish, but then they were saying that the English speakers would be left out of that information that the Spanish speakers had. So I think it's important to do something bilingually, and not just in Spanish, but if there's other communities out there,
Languages, right.
that need it.
Refugees.
Right.
Mhm.
Arabic.
Thank you.
Chinese.
Vivi Hernandez.
Hello, my name is Iridiana Hernandez from Center for Neighborhood Leadership, where we work with different organizations, and we've been meeting with the police department for about 3 years now, and different recommendations that we have seen as well that are necessary in our community to build the trust. As we've heard, and I think part of the CPTI was a result of there was an outcry last December at city council meetings where a lot of people were questioning what happened with the 34 recommendations. Where did they go? What was implemented? What wasn't? And there were dozens upon dozens of people that filled the city council meetings, and we're demanding for a next step, and we're demanding for more things. So with that, I think the CPTI process definitely needed to be more community oriented and involve more community members as part of the process. At some points, we requested to present, whether it was ACLU or Justice That Works. We reached out we were going to go to these meetings where we were told that they're not open meetings and that we couldn't go present. I think in one of the points in collecting information, it would have been really great to have some of those experts in those meetings to present. That wasn't available. So now we're asking that, as you know, Chief Yoners, you're talking about the things that are getting implemented. A lot of those need community input on what those means for our community and how we want those to be implemented. I know that there was one of the points on the shootings, the 5-year report. It took almost a year to get that report, and even though that has been out, there is still information that as community members we're asking needs to be reported or included as part of that report. Same as how reoccurring is that going to be, and what are some of the details on accountability to how reoccurring and how often we're going to have these reports. So I think it's great that a lot of the things are being implemented. There also needs to be a very clear community components on what community members see as important information to be added. And then to the Spanish meetings and including making this a more inclusive process. I was at the meeting yesterday as well. We definitely do need a Spanish-only meeting. Their video is not in Spanish. You know, a lot of the information that isn't in Spanish is problematic when we're listening and having competent translation in those. And so, again, we're asking that this process is open, that we, as we're thinking about what's going to be developed, community members have a say and have opportunity to expand that list or narrow down that list and what we think is important as well. And we're open here, Justice That Works, Puente Movement, Center for Neighborhood Leadership, and ACLU to help in any of that.
Hernandez, there's a question for you. Councilmember Pastor.
What report are you referring to?
The 5-year report on the shootings that came out, last year, end of last year.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, you asked the question, that report is going to be updated every 6 months, Chief?
Yeah, every year. It'll be updated every year. I have the information every 6 months, but we're going to put it on our website every year. We're working real hard on getting that information from 2015 out now.
And second question, regarding wanting to present to the CPTI, can you give me clarity on that?
Well, we, as a group, decided that we wanted to concentrate on our dialogue. We figured that the community listening session process would be a perfect place for all that other external dialogue to take place.
Okay, got it.
Alrighty, next one is Ben Laughlin, I think it is.
I'm Ben Laughlin. I'm here from Puente Human Rights Movement, and super appreciate y'all making time to let us have this conversation and for y'all to present here. I just want to kind of add on to what Viri and Norma have been saying, and just ask that we really get a timeline implemented here, a very clear timeline, to make sure kind of what people were saying earlier about not having what happened with the 2010 process to happen here. We would love to see a timeline put out by August, a very, very clear timeline put out by August. I know y'all said that things are going to be hopefully rolling out in the next 6 months. That's awesome. We want to see things for sure, like concrete laid out. Yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say right now. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And our last card to speak is from Plea. Ken, come on down.
Thank you, Councilman and members of the panel. My name is Ken Crane. I'm a rank and file Phoenix police officer and serve as a plea president, represent 2,300 rank and file cops. Just on the community trust initiatives, I'll be honest with you, a lot of this stuff is good stuff. We're really not opposed to it. There are a few issues of concern, I think, to the rank and file. A few issues, when we talk about the detailed report, anytime an officer pulls their gun out of the holster, I think point number 5, civilian review, complete civilian review panel. We have a lot of civilian review already in the police department at various levels. We have civilians that sit on our use of force boards, our disciplinary review boards. If an officer appeals discipline, they go before a complete civilian panel at the Civil Service Board. If there's criminal allegations, the county attorney, a civilian elected official, determines if a crime's been committed. So I think that's important to note. And then tracking detailed data on all traffic stops, any contacts and stuff like that, we do a lot of that already. To the degree I saw in the report, when you combine these 3 points, that typically equals consent decree. This is what police departments in the nation have to do when they're under consent decree. We've never been there. We've never even been close. We don't have a history of racial profiling or racially biased policing. So I think that's important to note out there. You couple that with the fact that Loretta Lynch from the DOJ is coming in and is going to hold Phoenix up as one of 6 examples nationwide of agencies that got it right. You know, that doesn't speak to the necessity for all of this other stuff here. On another point, Chief Yonner spoke to the fact that we already have a lot of community outreach programs, and we should continue that. We should strive to make those better. My organization, PLEA, we had the NAACP into our board meeting last week and spoke with them. We're going to have ongoing quarterly meets with them. One of my board members, Joe Kluwer, sits on the board of the NAACP and will be our law enforcement liaison. Right now, today, we have the 3rd tier of our Trust and Legitimacy Conference going on in Mesa. This is a grassroots effort driven by rank and file cops, not police administrators. We're getting national notoriety on this for our efforts in rank and file's outreach to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? We have a card for support. Mr. Robinson, thank you, and we'll put that in the record. Any comments from my colleagues or questions? Councilmember Pastor.
I happen to, due to the CPTI, when I was at National Leagues of City, I was able to attend several workshops regarding the 21st century policing. And that's where I saw at a national level what was happening, and was able to understand all, and there was the key people that were there, the data gathering that is happening that we're connected to, and the understanding of how it came about, who participated. I was glad to see that someone from Tucson, a chief, I believe, in Tucson, participated, that someone was represented from Arizona, and got a real national level, and then be able to come back with the 21st century book, task force recommendations, and then be able to break it down to the CPTI and see that we are, I would say, very proactive in looking at what's happening at a national level and then starting to implement it on the local level. So I commend you for that, and I also commend the community for keeping everybody focused and continuing to look at and refining some of the recommendations. I believe that the city manager did a holistic review of what community members were going to sit on a task force. Sometimes a task force can get really busy and you can't get some things done, and there's just a lot of opinions. So I commend you for doing that and looking at it in a very diverse way. I also like the suggestion of including behavioral or mental or intellectually person on the committee, because I struggle with that every day with my son. He also has ADHD, is very impulsive, and at times the way the brain works with him is his impulsivity comes into play and could be marked, I worry every day, as he gets older, could be marked as, okay, he's being defiant, angry, and all this other, and something could happen to him. So I do hear the concerns of that community. And so it would be, never thought of it about it, but I'm glad the recommendation was there. As for the community forums, I hope we get those up sooner than later. I do know that we go on break in July, And so if there's the possibility to still do it in July and August, I'm sure many of my colleagues will be available to host their community forum in that area. In the other piece is, I lost my notes. In one of the data, and I was trying to look for it in the 21st century, I can't find it, but it talks about data. And it talks about the officers to record or to place the shootings, and then also missed incidents, and another, I'll find it, another piece where it talks about to record that data. And so that is part of one of the 21st century bullets, and I think it's good that we're going to start to record it here. The civilian, one of the key pieces is I'm hearing is the civilian piece. I feel like maybe we need to do an analysis of all the boards that we have and what their functions are, and maybe look at it and see if we add other pieces to it. I'm not really sure. So that's for me wanting just an analysis of it. Because I hear I think it's in the back, I don't know, I lost it. One of the recommendations. Am I correct or wrong? And so I think maybe, is it the Community Relations Bureau?
added 3 more boards.
I'm not really sure.
You should mention that.
It's somewhere in here. And so maybe to take a look at that. And also have a combo of some of our representatives from PLE to be in a part of these conversations with the community. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you to the city manager for convening this group. Thank you to our community leaders who stepped up and volunteered their time, as well as the folks in the community who have been informal advisors to the group, and our staff who spent countless hours working on this. It was neat to see some of the compilations of all the work that the police department is doing in the community. I know there are hundreds of meetings every year just in the precincts I represent, but it's good to see in one place how much we are out in the community. At the same time, I don't think we've been out enough in the community with this particular initiative, and that we do need more feedback, and council members, we have to step up and be involved with that. We got some great suggestions today about more targeted outreach that we need to do, whether it's for individuals who have expertise in autism, people with different languages. We are, in many areas, national leaders in outreach. I very much appreciate the chief convening a Refugee Police Advisory Board. It was something I'd asked the previous police chief to do, and I'm glad that you stepped up and did it. I think it really does mean something that the refugee community was on this trust initiative. Most of us in this room were born in this country, are very familiar with policing, but if you come from a country without a functioning government, it's a whole different world, and there's very unique issues. It says a lot about us that we're a welcoming community, that we try to address those issues. Probably we will never be able to understand some of the challenges and life experiences that individuals in our refugee community have experienced, but I think it reflects well on us that we are trying to do that, and I hope it's something that we will continue to try to do. We at the city do not have primary responsibility for the education system or the mental health system, but we see the consequences of areas where those systems are not doing as well as they can. Our officers are often the first people on the ground working with folks who are mentally ill. The city alone cannot address the challenges of the mental health system, but whether we like it or not, we are going to be the first responders, and we have to deal with the consequences of the mental health system. So we're going to need a lot of other branches of government to step up. And also within the city, the police department can't do this alone. In terms of least harm solutions, we've been making good progress with our prosecutors being out with pilots as part of our My Brother's Keeper initiative. We have our municipal court system represented here today, and I'm very proud of what we're doing on the compliance assistant program with the municipal court system. The objective is safety. It's not punishing folks, and so we are moving towards lower harm solutions. We have a lot of work to do, but this committee in particular has been stepping up and focusing on those areas. So I just think it's important to acknowledge that this cannot be an initiative just of the police department and that we all have to work together. But we've been challenged by the community and the police department, and we have to step up. For me, we hear civilian review as a solution often, but I've also heard a lot of concerns about the civilian review that we do have. We've had several instances where the police department has said, we want to fire an officer, and civilians have said, we don't want you to. We overrule that decision. We have a lot of reform that I think we need to do on the Civil Service Board, just in terms of procedures and training. We could do better there, and I know that's something we're working on, and I'll be asking for regular updates on, because we do need more formal structure, training. Councilwoman Pastor and I have had great opportunities to learn from some of the federal studies, but not necessarily everyone involved in our Civil Service Board system has received that same training, and as we learn more as a community, we ought to step up and learn lessons from other communities. We want to continue to be leaders in public safety, and we need to learn from what others are doing in their experience as well as improving in our area. So I think this is just the beginning, but it's a good beginning, and we can build on this foundation. So thank you to those who have gotten to us where we are today.
Thank you. And just some closing remarks for myself. I just really want to thank the city manager for putting this task force together, and the 17 individuals that given up many hours of their times to represent their communities. Listening to the testimonies from, especially from Norma, Irene, and Vivi, it just gives me memories of 25 years ago. I was on that side of the microphone and hollering and screaming and saying that we need more community outreach. Back then, the chief of police formed an advisory committee of Hispanic, Chicano, and Latino leaders. And I was one of those individuals on that first task force. And basically, the chief was reaching out to our communities saying, what can we do better? How can we communicate better? And that was over 25 years ago. And sitting here on this side of the table and seeing all the different efforts that are being out there. I mean, from the SB 1070 marches, where our community respond officers sitting in a room with the individuals organizing the marches and making sure that everyone's safe, that the individuals that are driving down the road, the protesters, and the individuals that are protesting the protesters were all taken care of. And it was a hard task, and it's a lot of revenue and a lot of resources that the city of Phoenix had to put up to make sure that our city was safe and making sure that all those individuals that want to practice their First Amendment rights were taken care of. And with all that hatred on the street, with everything that was going on there, where people were marching and there was individuals with guns and rifles on the side of on the sidewalk that you had to walk through. It was just amazing that everything was done really coordinated, and it was because we sat down. We sat around a table, we had a conversation, just like what we're doing today. And I think that's really important, that we continue the conversations. And over the last 25 years, what I've learned is as long as you can sit around the table and you can have that dialogue, and the dialogue is an open dialogue, and you keep on inviting more people to the table. And I think that's what I'm hearing today, is that the city manager, the police chief, is willing to bring more people to the table. As those concerns come up in those groups that maybe were overlooked, and we're bringing up the autism, I mean, that's something that I overlooked myself, and it's important that we bring in that community, and there's probably other communities out there that need to be brought to the table. But the community outreach is important, and I agree, and I think that the city manager and the chief are open to it. I think what they're trying to do is respect our time during the budget hearings, but right after the budget hearings, I do agree with my colleagues, we need to bring it out as it's top of mind of everyone right now. But at the same time, once again, those meetings should be a meeting where we bring in input, we sit around a table, we have the dialogue, and that we come up with solutions. And I think that's what this committee has done. I think there might be some other things that we maybe overlooked, but I just really want to thank those 17 members for working hard. I mean, it's almost a year now that this task force was created, and we're getting recognized, not just on a national level, but, you know, other police departments are coming to us saying, what are you doing here in Phoenix? What's your best practices? Because we want to basically take them to our cities too. So I just recommend not just our police force, but also the community involvement and that community outreach officers that are out there that respond to our community block watches and neighborhood associations. I mean, our city's unique by having those police officers in each precinct that are just dedicated to reach out to the community. And I think that's something very special. Until you go into another city and you don't have that direct communication with that precinct or with those commanders through those officers, you won't know what we have here in Phoenix until you don't have it anymore, right? So, you know, once again, thank you all for coming up with these great ideas. It really comes from the community, and it's really implemented by the top management, from the police chief all the way down to his management. So thank you all for what you do, and thank you for putting on that uniform to protect and serve our community and putting your lives on the line for us.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Absolutely. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone who's been involved to date. I think this is a tremendous beginning, and I want to emphasize beginning. This city continues to grow, and it grows in its diversity. And it is a life-changing experience for the older residents who have lived here, as well as the new ones coming into a community. One of the comments made was about social services. Well, police officers were never social service trained. They might have had empathy for some of the people they picked up. I can remember my husband, Chief, don't listen, saying, well, he picked up an inebriated grandma and he took her home. I mean, it was that type of situation. It wasn't the conditions that officers are faced with today. I would love to have the city take the lead in this, but quite frankly, it's not our responsibility. I think one of my colleagues said, City of Phoenix does not have jurisdiction in mental health issues or education, but we do have a lot of influence. And I'm wondering if in future meetings with this committee, if you could bring in a legislator who is interested in mental health issues, because quite frankly, the state's the one that should be funding these services. They should be working. They're as much of the community as we are. And they need to understand what reality is and what consequences are. And they need to step up to the plate and help us. And I think it's really important that we get them involved, and also maybe MAG, who has some jurisdiction in mental health services, that we can set some protocols, that we can have response teams, and we can have training, which I think is the key to all this. I'm the mother, the wife, and grandma of a future police officer for the city of Phoenix. And I know from that perspective, every day when they left, I had a fear that'd be the last time I'd see them. And that the conditions that they served under are much different from what my grandson's conditions he's hoping to face within the next 18 months. He's praying that he's going to become a Phoenix police officer. And I just shudder. I do everything I can to talk him out of it because times have changed so much. People have access to so many more weapons. There is a tendency to have violence first before conversation anymore. Good is not automatically assumed. It's bad assumed immediately. And I think a lot of that is we need to have training. We need to have training for our officers on how to deal with some of these situations. We need to be training our kids in school how to interface with police officers, especially some of the different cultural groups. I also have, we have mixed race grandkids, and we have spent a lot of time saying, how do you respond if you're stopped? And I know there are challenges there. So I want to thank everybody. I know it's just the beginning, but I really look forward to this going and be inclusive. There are some Block Watch alliances in the north that deal with a lot of large Block Watch groups, neighborhoods, that I know would be very interested, would help be in training, and I think our school resource officers could also be implementing new programs, come up with slogans, whatever, in schools that help people understand and educate. So I thank you all for participating on this and look forward to where we go in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chief, I know that I was a part of the Hispanic Advisory Committee. How many advisory committees do we have that right now operating?
We just added 3. I think we have 12. Mike, is that right? 12.
And can we, I know I'm putting you on the spot, can you name them off? So
No. I can get close, though.
I've done it before to Chief Kurtenbach.
He can. That's his thing. But, those advisory boards are huge. And we, you're going to hear about on-body cameras and policy in a little while. We run a lot of information by them, and they're a huge resource for us. And it's very diverse, like we've talked about, from refugee, Hispanic, African-American, Muslim, on and on and on and on. There's 12 of them. But they're a great resource for us.
All right, thank you, Chief. And I think that's it. Thank you all for the presentation. I know the next we had jail alternatives, but we are continuing that. We were just asked to continue item number 17 also. The individual that was going to give us the report happens, 18, I'm sorry, is ill. And now we're on, okay, we're on item number 17. And that would be general towing services revenues update.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Jessica Rothschild is here, as well as one of our legal advisors, legal attorneys Ian White, to provide the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. I'm here to provide an update on general police towing services regarding revenue.
And I actually have a request. Now that we have 3 working microphones and 3 speakers, maybe we give you each a microphone?
Certainly. We can slide.
I think we heard there's some feedback we didn't.
I'll slide over there. I'll slide down.
Some people are watching online and want to make sure that they can hear as well.
Just to give you a brief background, we've recently completed the first 3 years of the general services towing contract. And in January of this year, the finance department completed the 1-year extension process. We have the option to extend 1 more year. Do I? I think that's too far. Right here, I have listed the types of different impounds that Phoenix officers tow for. Under 3511, we have 30-day impounds. Each of these impounds are assessed an administrative fee of $150. And I have examples of reasons that officers tow under this statute. We have, just to name a few, an individual operating a vehicle without a license, if the person is cited for aggravated extreme or underage DUI. We also have under Phoenix City Code 2355, another 30-day impound for solicitation of prostitution. Those impounds are also assessed an administrative fee of $150.
We have a question on 3511.
Okay.
Councilmember Pastor.
Transporting, moving alien, conceal and harbor, shield an alien. Can you explain to me who an alien is?
That is considered a person in the country illegally. Any other questions? Okay. Under ARS 28872, these include our non-moving violations, a vehicle involved in an accident, stolen recoveries, incident to arrest, and if a officer responds to the scene of an accident or a vehicle that is broken down in the roadway, they have the ability to request a tow under our general services contract to assist a vehicle owner. Under Phoenix City Code 36, for the non-30-day impounds, we also have the 48-hour abandons, blocking driveways, expired meters. These are assessed a cost recovery fee of $104.50.
Why is there a difference of about $46 between the impound of the number 36 and the other fees that are at 150 administration fees?
The administration fee of $150 is under the 3511 violations that is specified in the ARS under the state law. And the Phoenix City codes, there's a specific to Phoenix City Code.
So 28,872 is the Phoenix code, or PCC 36 impounds?
PCC 36 is Phoenix Code.
Okay. And the other before that is ARS?
Correct.
Got it. Wasn't clear.
The next slide, I have a breakdown of the revenues generated by each of these types of impounds. I did a comparison of fiscal year 13-14, 14-15, and year-to-date as of the end of February. And it shows you where we've collected for 3511, auction proceeds, the PCC 36 fees, and on down the list. Thank you.
Any questions for us? Okay. Jessica, you have anything else to add?
I just broke these down by slide just to show you a comparison in a pie chart to show you the breakdown of the fees for 13-14, 14-15, and then year-to-date.
Councilmember Pastor?
I'm just curious, so my car gets impounded, and it starts as $150 in order to get it out of the yard?
The $150 is assessed if your vehicle's towed for a violation under 3511. So those are the 30-day impounds. So you're required to show certain requirements under that same statute, which is a valid license, proof of insurance, valid registration, and the $150. That's paid directly to the police department. If everything is current and valid, the police department issues an authorization for release that's taken to the tow yard. The vehicle owner then pays towing and storage fees.
That's where I wanted to go. So what is the towing and storage fees? Because isn't that $30 or $75 a day?
The initial towing fee ranges anywhere from $15 to $29, and that goes up to a level 5, and that's based on gross vehicle weight. And then for every day of storage, they're also assessed an amount of $15 up to, for 30-day tows, it's $15 a day.
Okay, so that's where it starts to accumulate.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So how does a vehicle end up being put up to auction after a certain amount of time being held in storage, or?
That is correct. If the vehicle is left abandoned at the tow yard files for an abandoned title. The motor vehicle division has to conduct a title search to notify any interested parties on that vehicle. If there's no response, then the tow yard eventually gets title to that vehicle.
What I'm noticing here is that from the total resources, we were at 3.4 million, 2.7, and now mid-year we're about 1.4. It looks like it's a decline instead of a upcline in our towing fees, right?
That is correct.
And the reason behind that, or?
There are a number of factors. We have the number of impounds are down. We have fewer officers on patrol. We also have a decrease in the price of scrap metal that contributes to that as well. And more recently, we had the implementation of the new RMS system. It has become difficult for officers on patrol to navigate the new easy form that is used in lieu of the handwritten form. And we're currently working on sending out some updates and some retraining of the officers.
So
Councilmember Pesch.
is it possible to still write a written form, and then if there's obviously there's a disconnect right now, and so is it possible to still write a written form in order to get things processed?
It is possible. It does create more work for the staff in the vehicle impound unit because everything is supposed to be electronic currently, but it's not. So it requires extensive research in order for us to meet statute requirements to notify vehicle owners of the impound.
Vice Mayor?
Could you elaborate a little bit more? This committee is very interested in the RMS system, as you are well aware. Could you sort of elaborate a little bit more about the difficulties with the forms and?
The easy form that the officers are required to utilize at this time, they take more time and they're difficult to navigate from the information that we've gathered from the patrol officers. Whereas before they were very used to completing a handwritten form, they are now required to use the electronic form, and their printers may malfunction. They may not know how to complete it correctly. There are a number of factors.
Yes, I just assumed that it would be the same form online.
Exactly.
Well, no, we don't.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, Vice Mayor, we're going through transition. I mean, the RMS is, everything is going to be electronic. This is another version of things going electronic. And in time, we'll be just as efficient. As Jessica said, we're going to do retraining of our officers. It's an ongoing process. We're about 6 months in. We've gotten a lot better in the last couple months, and we're going to continue to make changes to that system, retrain. We have 2,700 police officers, and we need to get to all of them and get them a comfort level in all aspects of RMS, and we're working hard to do that.
We regularly, as a council, get asked to fund new automation and new forms, going away from paper forms, and we are looking at that with new scrutiny after the experience with RMS, I think. Go ahead.
But in the transition, is there a method in the transition as we're transitioning from paper to electronic? There's still a gap. And so my concern is if I'm just going to be a police officer today. If I was a police officer out on patrol, handling a many of different things, and this system is very difficult to enter these items, that might be one of the items that gets missed and put on the back burner for later when I have time to enter. And so I'm just curious in the sense of how do we capture that, even though it may be harder on staff to still get it into the system, and be able to keep things moving as we're going through the transition. And I know how hard it is.
Councilwoman Castro, we do work very hard. They do a daily reconciliation of each tow that each vendor completes. So they ensure on our end that each record is in the system. And if it's not there, if there's a time lag, then the staff, they enter it in manually.
So they're still filling out the paper?
Some officers are.
So it is. So it is happening. Okay, all right, that's what, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can add just overall in terms of the RMS process, there are certain parts of the process where admittedly we are struggling, not just in the police department, but in other departments. It is in some respects, a totally different system than the one that's been used for 25 years.
Right.
And keystroke requirements are different. The training part is a bit different. And we fully expected it to take a year or so to get this fully implemented to where we're smooth and seamless. Right now, we're not that. It also reflects some of the issues we have in processing people into the courts, and where we have a lot of feedback from users that this is too onerous. Sometimes we're looking at changing the process so it's not as onerous, but that's not always possible for us to do easily.
Just want to make sure I understood this correctly, though. Towing revenues are down in part because the form is difficult to fill out.
That is one of the contributing factors.
But one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this up to the subcommittee was to actually look for revenues to help us offset the costs of our police officers out there. I know that we're expecting about 300 new police officers, but then as we go out to public hearings and budget hearings, people are asking for more police officers. We're hearing about body cameras, and all that comes with the price tag. Is there any way or anyhow that this revenue can go back into helping us offset those costs for body cameras or equipment, or even helping offset some of the costs for the police officers? Because I know right now it probably goes back into our general fund, right?
Mr. Chairman, that is the common practice for all general fund departments. Their revenue generated goes into the general fund. If council wanted to make some decisions around how to appropriate the money that comes in, you could certainly do that. But in terms of it coming straight from being received, going into for a particular use, that wreaks a little havoc with our financial system and protocols.
Yeah, because what we're hearing out there is that the residents are asking us to come up with creative ways to fund more officers and equipment. So I was just seeing if this might be one of those revenue driven ways of doing it. If not, I think we need to continue pursuing different ways of finding those funds to support the police officers and the tools that they need to protect our community.
Yes, if I could add, Mr. Chairman, part of the challenge, it's difficult to set up a system where, in theory, an officer may be motivated to generate more towing because it's providing money directly back. That's how that would be viewed. So we're going to get more money if I go out and tow more people. So I'm going to go tow more when it may not be necessary. So you need a sort of a line there between the action and the revenue trail.
I agree with you 100%. It's the same thing with tickets, right? More citations, the more revenue is driven. But I don't believe that our police officers would ever do that. I was just thinking of other ways of coming up with creative ways of generating funds to support the force. So in the future, if we can maybe come up with some suggestions, and I know that there's some suggestions of creating a property tax, and some individuals have mentioned a food tax. If there's some way somehow internally that we can generate revenues, that's thinking outside the box that I'd like to start seeing. Thank you. Any other comments? With that, thank you so much. Is it still on? Yeah. Thelda, are you still on? Councilmember Williams? I think she hung up. I heard her click off earlier.
Oh.
Going once, going twice. We're going to lose our quorum right now, so then we're going to have to continue the rest of the items for the April 13th.
Okay.
All righty, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.